the invisible empire that controls global shipping. Have you ever wondered if shipping was never really about ships at all? If what we move across oceans has always been less about goods, and more about control? Every day, billions of products leave ports across the world. You click buy now, and somewhere in the distance, a container shifts. A ship the size of a skyscraper slides silently through the Pacific. Waves crash, cranes groan, and satellites trace its every move. You might never think of it, but that simple purchase, that pair of shoes, that smartphone, that bag of coffee beans, sets in motion a chain of power older than the nations we live in. We call it global trade. But what if global trade is just the modern disguise for something ancient, a quiet empire that rules not with soldiers or kings, but with shipping lanes and invisible agreements? Because if you trace the history of how goods move, you'll find the story of how power moves too. Long before oil and steel, long before container ports and barcode scanners, the sea was the world's first network. To sail was to command, to trade was to reign. The Phoenicians didn't build ships just to travel, they built the arteries of the first global economy. Rome's might depended not on its armies, but on its grain fleets feeding millions across the Mediterranean. Whoever controlled the ships controlled survival. It was the same story with the Arab traders on the Indian Ocean, the Chinese fleets of Xingyi, the Portuguese in their caravels, the British in their merchant navy. The vessels changed, the sails turned to steel, but the principle never shifted. Shipping is civilization's bloodstream. And whoever commands the flow commands the fate of nations. Today, we live in what seems like a different world: sleek container terminals, real-time tracking, instant delivery promises. But in truth, we've only made the old empire more efficient. The sails are digital now. The compass is an algorithm. And still, a handful of players control almost everything that moves. You may think competition rules global trade, but behind the glossy names of thousands of shipping companies, there are only a few who actually matter. The same 5 conglomerates own or operate most of the container fleets on Earth. They control the ports. They negotiate the routes. They set the fees. From the port of Shanghai to the coast of Rotterdam, their influence threads invisibly through the veins of the planet. It's a quiet monopoly, one hidden beneath the waves. The flags on the ships may be different, but the money always ends up in the same few hands. And the irony? We don't even know their names. These corporations rarely appear in your newsfeed or on the products you buy. They don't need to. They're not selling to you. They're moving everything you'll ever buy, long before you even see it. The world's shelves, the screens, the raw materials, all orchestrated by an empire you never elected, but one you depend on completely. It's almost poetic, how invisible it all is. The modern economy runs on a system so massive, so synchronized, that it's practically impossible for an individual to notice. You don't see the cranes loading your phone, or the docks where food prices are decided. You just wake up one day and find that shipping delays mean inflation, that port congestion means unemployment, that a ship stuck sideways in a canal can freeze half the global economy overnight. Remember the Ever Given? One ship, wedged across the Suez Canal in 2021, cost the world nearly $10 billion a day in halted trade. Planes kept flying, the internet kept working, and yet the world stood still. It wasn't a war or a cyber attack, just one ship, blocking one channel, proving one truth: the empire that controls the seas still controls everything. But that empire doesn't need emperors anymore. It doesn't even need territory. It only needs logistics. Think about it, the real wealth of nations doesn't lie in resources anymore. It lies in routes, in choke points, in who gets to decide what moves, when it moves, and at what cost. The Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal, the Red Sea, each one a pressure point, a nerve in the global body. Touch it, and economies shiver. Close it, and countries bleed. Yet the most unsettling part of this story isn't that a few companies control trade. It's that the rest of us don't even notice how dependent we've become. We think we're free because we can buy anything from anywhere, anytime. But that's not freedom, that's a carefully managed illusion. Because every item, every delivery, every 2-day shipping promise ties us deeper to a network we'll never fully see. And that network runs on psychology as much as economics. Convenience is the new currency of control. The empire doesn't need to demand obedience when it can sell comfort instead. We don't question why bananas from Ecuador are cheaper than local fruit, or why the clothes on our backs cross 7 countries before reaching us. We don't ask how something can cost less to ship halfway around the planet than to make down the street. We just enjoy the bargain, and in doing so, feed the very system that quietly shapes our reality. But under that calm surface of global commerce lies a darker truth: the human cost. For every ship slicing through blue waters, there are workers living weeks, sometimes months, in floating isolation. Thousands of men from the Philippines, India, Ukraine, Nigeria, Indonesia, earning barely enough to survive, sleeping beside engines that never stop. They are the invisible crew of this invisible empire, keeping the world running while rarely setting foot on land. Some haven't seen their families in years. Some disappear at sea. Their wages are lower than ever, their rights nearly non-existent. Flags of convenience, a loophole allowing ship owners to register in countries with the weakest labor and environmental laws, keep profits high and accountability low. It's exploitation disguised as efficiency, and it's built into the very foundation of the system. Even the sea itself pays the price. The fuel burned by container ships is some of the dirtiest on Earth. The pollution they produce rivals entire nations. The plastic waste, the leaking oil, the ballast water carrying invasive species, it's an ecological debt so vast that no one really knows how to repay it. Yet the empire sails on, because slowing it down would mean slowing down the entire modern world. And perhaps that's the most chilling realization, that we are all, in some way, complicit. Our comfort depends on the suffering we don't see, the damage we don't measure, the hands we never thank. We don't mean to participate in it, but we do, every time we choose speed over sustainability, convenience over conscience. Still, this system isn't new. It's simply evolved. Once, shipping meant gold and silk and spice. Now it means data and oil and chips. But the logic is identical: whoever controls the flow controls the future. In ancient times, kingdoms fought to secure sea routes. Now, corporations do it quietly through trade agreements, digital monopolies, and maritime alliances. Instead of swords, they wield contracts. Instead of flags, they raise logos. We like to think of globalization as progress, as something inevitable. But maybe it's just the latest form of empire, one without kings or countries, but with far more reach. The sea is still the frontier. It's just that now, instead of explorers, it's accountants who rule it. There's a kind of dark poetry in that. Humanity began its grand story by setting sail, chasing horizons. And now, centuries later, we find ourselves trapped by the very system we built to connect us. The routes that once promised freedom now bind us tighter. The waves that once carried explorers now carry debts, contracts, and data packets. The ocean hasn't changed, only the cargo has. Maybe that's why the illusion works so perfectly. Because shipping feels distant. It's out there, somewhere beyond the horizon, too big to think about, too complex to challenge. It's invisible by design. And in its invisibility lies its power. Next time you order something online, a book, a gadget, a shirt, take a moment to imagine its journey. The ports it passes through, the workers who handle it, the documents that track it, the companies that profit from it. Imagine the silent machinery of global trade moving for your single click. Because that's what it takes, an entire empire, shifting quietly beneath your fingertips. You won't see its borders, but you live inside them. You won't feel its rule, but you obey its laws, every time you consume, every time you depend. The truth is, shipping was never just about moving goods. It's about moving dependence. It's about ensuring that every nation, every economy, every human desire stays tethered to the same invisible grid. The sea doesn't care who rules it, but the empire behind it does. And it's patient enough to outlast governments, currencies, and generations. Because as long as humanity keeps needing, buying, and consuming, the ships will keep sailing. And maybe that's the most haunting part of all, that we built this empire not through tyranny, but through choice. Through our hunger for more. Through our fear of waiting. Through our belief that convenience is progress. So when people talk about the future of trade, the rise of automation, AI logistics, drone delivery, they're not talking about liberation. They're talking about perfection. The final evolution of control. One day soon, the ships might sail themselves. The ports might run on algorithms. The humans might vanish entirely from the process. And when that happens, the empire won't even need to hide anymore. It will simply exist everywhere and nowhere. Because empires no longer need thrones. They only need routes. And as long as the world keeps moving, the invisible empire will remain, steady and silent, under the sunlight and salt, beneath the illusion of progress. So remember this, shipping is not just trade. It's memory. It's control. It's civilization's oldest whisper, echoing across every tide and every transaction, asking the same quiet question. Who really decides what gets to move? And in that question lies the answer to who truly rules the modern world.